Watching now the former President Trump at a roundtable with Latino leaders in Miami, the Doral area, as he said. He's already talked about some key important issues to Latino communities. He's been taking questions. And some of these people, I had on one of his spokespeople from his campaign last hour. She told me that they're flying them in from Arizona and other parts of the United States to have all of these business leaders and citizens in one place. So it's wider than just the state of Florida. It is another example of the former president's final sprint, his closing argument, as you'll often hear me say, to win over key minority voters with just 2 weeks to Election Day. Now, remember, his opponent, Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, is also trying to do some of this same thing. She's off the campaign trail today, reportedly or apparently getting ready for her visit with Telemundo. So they are both courting this particular voting bloc. Trump doing it at a live event right now, taking a ton of questions. He's been at this for about an hour. And so we'll bring you more as it's happening in Outnumbered. But we want to try to dissect some of already what's gone on there. You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-hosts, Emily Campagno and Kayleigh McEnany. Also joining us today, Kennedy, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, and Guy Benson, Fox News contributor and host of the Guy Benson Show on Fox News Radio. So, Kayleigh, this is such a critical point with exactly 14 days to go.
Yes.
There's not a lot of room for error. There is some room for courting.
Yes, there is some room for courting, and that's what you see President Trump doing. He's smart to do this. USA Today had a poll that showed him plus 11 with Latinos. Now, it is a little bit of an outlier. Our Fox News poll still shows Kamala Harris ahead, albeit by a much smaller margin than Democrats won in the last cycle. So this is President Trump saying, come to me, trust me. On immigration, Latinos support President Trump at our Fox poll, plus 15. They trust him on the issue. But when you add this to what we're seeing with black voters, it is a president that is remaking the Republican Party. Should these polling numbers materialize into votes? I could not believe when I saw a Reuters poll that 1 in 4 black men under the age of 50, 1 in 4 support President Trump. That is huge strides from a party that won 5% of black men in 2008. He has made this the party of diversity, the party of the working man with his working man's economic agenda, and no one would have predicted that, no less the media, in 2016 when he came down the golden escalator and they derided him as a racist, a xenophobe, all the things. People saw through it.
So, Kayleigh, just real quickly, part of what this former president, though, delivered that many black men, maybe over the age of 25, will remember because they were already in the workforce, was that historic low unemployment. And Trump was president for 3 years plus before the pandemic. So about the same amount of time of exposure to that economy in the current one.
Yes, and I'll never forget being on Air Force One and a Wall Street Journal op-ed popped. It was the editorial board, rather, and it was saying that black men gained with their wages more than white people in this country. That is a reversal of what typically happens. $4,300 in 1 year added to the paycheck. And the people who made the most gains were black, Latinos, non-white voters who have not historically seen those type of gains.
So, Guy, I'm looking at this guest list, and we've already heard some of the questioners who are in the room. Many of them are businessmen and women. What is the critical point here, too, that maybe is a nexus? Because you've got the economy being talked about. Anything else that you see from watching it?
Well, clearly the economy is the focus. And to Kayleigh's point, what Trump can say is not just, here's what I would do. People can recall his 4 years as president. That's a big advantage that he has this time that he didn't have really in 2020 because we were so overwhelmed by the pandemic, and that was sort of the #1 issue. And certainly in 2016, he was just a blank slate. Fortunately for him, most Americans look back with a sunny impression of the 4 years that he was in office on the economy, and that includes people across racial demographics. You know, the poll that you mentioned from USA Today, if Trump wins the Hispanic vote, let alone by 11 points, it's over. He will win the election. But even if he loses the Hispanic vote tighter than he has in the past, when you look at one demographic, Harris, after another, where it's Latinos, whether it's black voters, whether it's, there's a new poll today of Arab American voters, you're seeing those margins coming down for the Democrats with Trump improving across multiple groups. The question becomes, if that all is borne out in reality, where does she make up those votes? That is very much an open question. Is it women in the suburbs? Are there enough of them? I don't know how the math works for them if that's all true.
Well, and it's part of the reason why you would see him do an all-women town hall. But the Arab vote I want to get to with you, Kennedy.
Hello.
Because I'm wondering, you know, with what's going on and the call for ceasefire, have you noticed in the last day or so her big push for that? And of course, now that another leader with Hamas has been annihilated by Israel, there might be some ground to do a temporary one. We don't know. But would that really make up the difference for her to suddenly start talking foreign policy now?
No, I think, you know, all these massive strategy shifts for her this late in the game, all they show is that her team is very desperate and they didn't have a strategy to begin with. And I think what the former president is doing is, number one, he's listening, and he's been listening. And, you know, he was listening before 2016, and he really leaned into these economic policies because he saw groups of entrepreneurs across the country who were really underserved. So now what he's doing is he's just jostling their memories. He's still listening to them and what they need, but they're also reconnecting about, you know, they want to be unburdened by what has been during the Biden administration with regulations and taxes and an economic environment that punishes everybody and every community. So if you're talking about, do you remember when your company was making money? Do you remember when you could get a loan for your business? Do you remember when you could pay your employees more and charge less to your customers? Believe me, business owners of every stripe remembers that, and that's really what he's leaning into with these Latino voters.
Yeah, you know, it's also interesting, Emily, when you talk with them, many Latinos, as are Black Americans, are in those urban areas that have really been hit by crime. And the economy drives some of that, too, because there's such competition for resources with illegal immigrants in those blue cities and blue states. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, great question, great point. And I actually want to focus on the Black men for a second, because it's such a laughable and frankly offensive approach that I think Kamala Harris has taken. When she came out with her list of policy just now, right, to help Black men meet their full ambition, as the New York Post described it, it is a weird mix of the blatant unconstitutional, seemingly racist, and totally irrelevant. And you contrast that with what you're talking about, where with Trump's policies, that lifted up all Americans. That's the whole point. When Lawrence Jones had his barbershop meet and greets and connecting with voters there was one in particular that stuck out to me because he said, look, I'm an entrepreneur and a father and a grandfather. And this voter said, and I want what's best for my kids and my grandkids 10 years from now. This voter said, I'm paraphrasing, he said, we have enough crises going on in this country. He said, I'm attracted to the policies of keeping jobs here. And he said, most importantly, of job security. And then enter Vice President Kamala Harris, who says, I'm going to give $20,000 to Black male entrepreneurs. Blatantly unconstitutional. SCOTUS has struck down that language. Yeah. She says she's going to lift up, in particular, Black men in the marijuana industry, making a massive association. And she, I think that the third one was one of the funniest, where tossed into the plan was a vow to protect cryptocurrency investments. Please tell me how you can do that, because last time I checked, that would be market price fixing and totally illegal also. It's so disconnected, it's out of left field, and to me it smacks of the desperation that she's feeling because it's not based on actual connection and it's not based on actual Americans' needs.
Yeah, Kennedy, let's talk a little bit about the marijuana connection here and the marginalization that happens.
I do not have any, for the record.
No, it's not a pocket check. Not a pocket check today.
Yeah, okay, very good.
No, but seriously, what I'm saying is that it marginalizes and it brings up the old tropes of only Black men do weed, and certainly you can reach Black men with that, or potentially even Black women. I mean, what in the world does she think? How does she think that works?
It's incredibly condescending because if you talk to suburban white women, they're doing a special cocktail of Ozempic and marijuana edibles, and they're quite happy. So again, you know, that line of thinking is racist in its own right. Is that true? Absolutely. Yes. However, in New York, they tried to do the same thing. They tried to say, we're only going to give licenses to dispensaries for women and people of color. Everyone else get at the back of the line. So what happened in New York City? You had a proliferation of illegal pot shops, so many that the entire city has been oversaturated with illegal pot shops that are running as though they're legitimate businesses, but the people of color and the women who are doing their best to follow the rules, they are getting absolutely hosed because there aren't enough licenses. It may be illegal, this program, to begin with, and the black market has consumed them, so they can't even make any money.
By the way, can I just say, setting aside some of the specifics of the policies and the bullet points that they put out on this program for black men, I think I saw they had a brand new one today for Latinos that they put out. We're 2 weeks away from the election.
Right.
Yeah.
The previous one was, what, last week? If they are shoveling anything out the door with a few weeks left, that, to me, is a signal about how they're feeling internally, right?
She's still trying to distance herself from Biden. We are 14 days
Well,
out.
look, I have 2 words for you, Al Gore and Bill Clinton. That's
Yeah.
4 words.
There you
I mean,
go.
when you distance yourself from someone who in many areas was running much higher, +8 in some communities, and you're down by 2. And when you look at where Biden was with black and Latino voters and you look at where she is now, too, I don't know that you want to punch ahead of you. Like, I don't think you should be punching up. And I'm confused by why she's now suddenly distancing when she was in the room. Isn't that what they always tell us? She was the last woman in the room when all the big decisions that impact our lives were happening.
That's right. And this is a party now. She counts on one group, and it is white women. That is what she needs. And I just ask you, I mean, who would have thought that we would be here in 2024 where Democrats are the party of white women and Republicans are the party of Latinos, black, and the working class? Donald Trump has shifted this party.
Yeah. Well, look, today they are on opposite ends of the spectrum in how to reach audiences. Donald Trump is on the trail. This is not a rally. This is a Latino group of people that have come from across the country, many of them Latino business leaders, and they're in the room with the former president right now, and he's taking questions, answering questions, and we'll have more of that for you because we do want to share it. And then the other optic is what's going to happen later at Telemundo when a taped interview happens that reportedly the Vice President Kamala Harris is now getting ready for. And as Trump said a little while ago when we took it live last hour, he said, look, do you need all day to get ready for this room? So we'll see. We're covering it.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.